Kristi Jenkins, all the way from Seattle. We were chopping it up on the back end, talking about AI and technology and how people like yourself and myself, I guess we're the older generation now, are using it to just operate at light speed. So welcome to the Prime People podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about AI. Okay. I lost audio. Hey, Justin, I lost audio. Sorry. I can't hear you. Oh, now I hear.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yes.
Sorry, guys. We're having technical difficulties. Am I back?
You are back. I can hear you now, but I didn't hear anything except for the introduction. So you might have to go back a little bit.
So now I see Kristi talking, but I can't actually hear her. So bear with me 1 second, everybody. We're just having an audio and technical difficulty, which happens when you do lives, not the end of the world. And I think I can hear you now. You good?
Okay. I can hear you.
All right. Hard reset. So welcome to the Prime People podcast. Kristi Jenkins, all the way from Seattle. I was talking about how collaboration is so key in this business, right? Kristi and I met through Ryan Serhant and his network. We've talked so many times over DMs and Instagram messages. We've jumped on phone calls talking about what's working in our businesses over the years, from bull markets to the markets we're in today. And I figured the recent conversation we had talking about AI, being an older generation using technology, I think it was a great place to start this conversation. So how are you using AI in your business today, Kristi?
I think that's a great question. I think, like a lot of people of our generation, it felt very inhuman for a long time. I think I was focusing so much on the word artificial and not on the intelligence part of it. And I think that my attitude towards AI and all of that changed when I realized that it really is built by humans for humans. And the more that you treat it like a human and collaborate with it as if it was one of your colleagues, the better you're going to get out of it. And that's that concept changed how I used it completely.
That's very insightful. I think no different than a hammer or any other tool. You can be scared of AI, not use it, and then all of a sudden pick it up and destroy something because you don't know how to use the tool. And then you're like, well, that tool sucks because it just broke my table. Or you can use it to build a table, right? And I guess, what are like a few key things that you found in your journey with AI that are showing you what's possible?
I think, it started, and I think in the real estate industry, a lot of people think of it as just, writing text, writing marketing descriptions, helping generate some of that content. But I think for me, what it has allowed me to do is just kind of get some more inspiration. So I use it more as a foundational tool, not really as an end result tool. So for instance, I'm doing an open house this weekend, and I typed in, doing an open house, Halloween weekend. What are some ideas to attract new potential clients with a Halloween theme? And then it spit out some things. And I said, do that for, kids under the age of 10, and then revise that for adults, college educated adults, because it's a luxury new construction. So being able to type in exactly like it was my marketing director, being able to type in exactly what I want it to spit out for me, and then to be able to not have to start all over, but revise that list with some specifications. I think, that was just something I did just yesterday. So using it on a day-to-day basis in real life scenarios, I think the more that you use it and practice with it, the better it can serve you.
Yeah. So check this out with my daughter. Actually, I did this recently where she wanted to, what was it, like Ninja Warrior training or something like that. And I was like, I don't have any things to do like Ninja Warrior training. So I actually went into ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, create a game for, a 9-year-old girl and me to play at home and do Ninja Warrior training. So she gave me like this whole list of things. I'm like, that looks really messy. I'm gonna have to clean up after. So I went back and I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you make it not as messy? And it was hilarious because it actually did do the modification. The reason I make the comparison is that's what we're seeing in the real estate world. So internally at Prime, we call them our Prime protocols. And whether we're going to do a listing video or we're listing a property, doing a caption for social media, open houses, what we're finding is we're developing these proprietary protocols, prompts, and sequence of prompts that make our version of AI different than anybody else's. When you're creating your prompts, are you just saving them on a note, or like, what are you doing on your end?
Well, I think that depends. I think the beauty about AI is that, and I don't want to like say recreate the wheel every time, but I think the beauty about it is that it is different and it is so customizable every time that I don't know that I've ever used anything exactly the same way again. You know, because you're doing it for different reasons, different clients, different purposes. You're attracting a different audience with whatever you're doing, or you're creating a little bit different event for what you're using it for. So I don't know that I have a great way of tracking, although that's, I mean, I'm a consummate list maker. So,
Sure.
you know, putting it in some kind of a list, it would be in a table format for me if I did anything like that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So open houses, what else are you using it for currently?
To come up with events. So we are doing I support Olive Crest Foster Family Agency. So we're doing a big drive for Christmas and doing 60 gifts on a gift list for the teenagers in Olive Crest. And we're coming up with ideas of how we can not only encourage people to participate, but how can we kind of streamline the process and get the gifts from Amazon or wherever they are to my house to wrapped to Olive Crest. And it just putting in some prompts allowed me to realize, you know what, we can attract some teenagers because gift wrapping for a nonprofit, that's a great way for them to earn some hours for volunteering. And, just some different ideas like that we can kind of stretch these events, attract a different group of people, which just allows me to market it differently and talk to people about it differently, which increases my reach, which increases my brand awareness. And that just kind of continues to, the cycle of putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And I love that idea. So you're sitting down, you're hammering out the details on that. You get the output and you're happy with the output. What does the implementation of the output look like to you? Like you said, you're a list maker. Does it go on a checklist? Do you send it to other people that you're collaborating with? Like, how do you execute to make sure you get the results you want? And I'm assuming you're adapting on the fly as you're executing sometimes, right?
Yeah, definitely for things like that. I'm putting it onto a spreadsheet and then kind of trying to figure out what is the timeline and implementation. I think I'm probably one of those people. I'm a little bit more of like an overseer. So I'm pretty good about delegating pieces of that. So I think once I come up with a plan, then each piece of that goes out to whoever needs to kind of be in charge of that. And I take over kind of more of a management role in that. So for right now, for that event, all that's gone out so far is an invitation to my office to participate and a note in email to some key people that I know will participate in that, just to get the ball rolling. And those were kind of my first steps in implementation, was set the date aside and get a few key people involved in it. And then, we'll kind of implement as the time goes on. And we don't even have the list yet of what we need to purchase. So as soon as that comes in, then some other steps in the process will come together.
I actually think there's a pretty special lesson in that, though. A lot of people won't do something until it's 100% complete, right? They won't start a newsletter because they're like, well, no, it needs to be absolutely perfect and optimized, and I have all the info, and then I'll do it. I'm actually doing a presentation on Friday about the difference between one day or day one, right? And it sounds like you take a day one approach to, oh, look, we'll figure it out. Let's just implement and execute. And there's a principle in project management called prototype project management, where you implement the prototype and then make adjustments as you go. I think that that's the future that we live in today. And I think AI is allowing us to do that at scale. Question for you, though. Where do you think people are going wrong in our industry with using AI? Because I think this is a pretty in-depth topic.
I think they're trusting it too much to be their voice. Mm-hmm. And I think I think that everything just like if I have people work for me or bring a project to me, I'm going to edit, revise, give my feedback, give my input. AI is no more capable of reading your mind and doing it exactly the way you want it to as somebody who works for you.
Mhm.
So I think people are using it, they're creating these, marketing descriptions, and they're forgetting that there's a story. You're telling a story. And I don't know, even though you can ask it to rewrite it, in English prose or, for college educated people, I think that you can tell it
Yeah.
to do things a certain way, but you still have to have feedback. You still have to input your own voice, your own texture, your own ideas into that. Because ultimately, we've talked a lot about, you and I have talked about this, your brand, who you are is your brand. And I want everything that comes from me and my office and my people to sound like me. And I don't think that AI can replicate that yet. And so I think people are putting it out there, and it sounds very artificial, kind of to go back to the way that I, originally thought of AI. And I don't think that that's the intent. I think it's meant to be used as a tool. I think it's meant to be used as inspiration. I think, like Ryan Coyne says at, Storehand, it's a template. It's a starting point, but it shouldn't be your ending point. I think people are relying on it too much to be kind of the end all for laziness, for not doing what they know that they need to do to put the work into what it is that they want to see the outcome for.
Absolutely. I think, and you will lose your client's trust faster by putting something out there that is boilerplate, that is no effort was put into. And I think everybody realizes when it's written by AI and when it's human. Here's a case study for you. I have a property that I own with my wife that we put on the market today. And we were flying through getting the broker open, the open house ready, the marketing. We actually have 3 properties in Grand Bend, all completely different. 2 of my favorite clients. One's riverfront with a boat dock. One's a brand new build, steps from the beach. And this is on a private lake, ultra secluded. So I was like, okay, we're going to use the golden triangle. I'm sure somebody's going to come see this that wants to buy this, whatever. Like I'm focused on that. The listing description, we use ChatGPT. We have a protocol that we use of here's the details of the property. Here's how we like to write it. Here's kind of my voice. And we've literally built out the protocol so that it gives us a good baseline. Okay. I sent the description to my wife and she's like, who wrote this? Because she's like, this is not your voice at all. It said words that I would never say in a way that I would never say. And I laughed because I'm not the person that was going to write the description, because I'm the energy ideas guy, right? I'm the like, let's push the whole project forward. My wife is phenomenal when it comes to copywriting. So she actually has been working on it. Thank you, Shannon. I know you're doing it literally right now to make sure it's perfect. But I think it's the Andy Warhol effect, where Andy Warhol would create the vision, and then he would be like the first 10%. Then the people would come in, build it, the 80%. And then he'd come in at the end and put his finishing touch on it. And nobody watching this ever knew Andy Warhol didn't create like 80% of his own stuff. Right. So I think you brought that up. And I think encouraging people to be more human is one possibility with AI, or you can use it to put out content that is quality of an average middle schooler. But I think you're going to lose a lot of good faith in the community, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And I think just, the longer that you do this, just like you and I have, there's things that we get used to. There's things that we do because it's part of our process. There's things that we do because it's comfortable, but it might not be fresh. It might not be all that we could be making out of a situation. And I think that's where AI comes into play really well too, is because sometimes it just gives you some different, fresh ideas and you go, oh, that's right. Oh, I thought about that a year ago, but I never recorded a video on that topic. Or, it brings stuff to mind that helps you to expand what you're already doing in maybe a way that you hadn't thought about or done or implemented before, but just kind of brings those ideas back.
You're giving me ideas talking about ideas. Because like, as you explained that, I wanted to share with you and the audience, something we're doing is creating custom avatars for if I'm selling that property, who's going to appreciate privacy, who wants a lakefront property, and then it'll pump out like personas, and then you can target against personas, and like you can go so deep with this stuff. But even from a simple content production standpoint, what you just shared gave me an idea. So Nico, remember this. I can take that persona and then say, hey, can you give me like 20 questions that client might have? And then if I'm going to shoot reels, which I'm going to do after this, I can literally make such good use of my time, where before you and I would take a whole day to like do one of those things. And now we can do 5 or 6 things at the same time. Right.
Yep, exactly. And to expand on that too, like when you're talking to potential buyers, I think, when you go into a listing presentation, you want to stand out. You want to do something that sets you apart. You want that seller to feel like there is nobody that is going to do this job better than you. And you've got to provide something different of value, right? You can't just do a CMA and say you're going to put out some color brochures and put it online and call it good. But to be able to say that the target market for this house, to be able to say, I know the income, what they're looking for, who they are, what their relationship status is. I mean, AI can spit out those profiles for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to take to a seller and say, I know not only how to market this from a general standpoint, but I know who we're marketing to. And I know that this is what they search for. I know that this is, where they're going to be looking for the house. I know that's why we need to have this presented a certain way. There's, you follow that through. It's not just the end all. You don't just find the buyer profiles for the house, but you take it a step further and you go, and that means we have to market differently in this way. And that's why we're going to do this for it. And that's why the open house is going to be on this day and this time. And it's going to feature all of that it's exciting. It's exciting because it brings up some different ideas and different ways to approach something that we, could just do on autopilot, but we shouldn't.
You definitely shouldn't, because if you're writing the personas out, it's something I've always loved to do, and sit down with clients and reverse engineer, like, who's going to buy this house? And that's the strategy. Something that could take me 2 hours to write out now takes me 5 minutes. But I've also seen, like, talking about losing trust with clients, I've seen outputs of the personas where I read them and I'm like, if I said this to a client, they would clearly know I have no idea what I'm talking about, because this is not the persona of the person for this area. And I think, again, it allows you to be more human. It allows you to showcase that level of expertise that requires the personal touch and the craftsmanship of what we do. And I do feel like we are returning to an age of craftsmanship, whether it be somebody that does millwork, somebody that owns a tea lounge, or somebody that loves photography or real estate. And the craft of real estate is probably one of my favorite topics. So I guess going back to, like, the basics of what we do, we'll get back to AI in a second. What do you think are the, like, core components that makes an exceptional agent that is really a cut above everybody else?
Oh, I think it's follow through. 100%. I can't tell you how often, I hear from clients that I've worked with in the past, how important it was that I checked back in with them at 30 days, how I checked back in with them at 6 months, how I'm constantly, making sure that that they've used their warranty, that they know how to, it's taking care of people, not just in the transaction, it's taking care of them as homeowners.
Yeah.
You want to be their real estate agent for life. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to attract all new clients all the time. I'm doing this so that I'm here for my clients through every different stage that they need a real estate agent for. That's the beauty of doing this for as long as I have, is I have repeat clients. Sometimes sold one client. That's pretty special. I've gotten to know him very, very well and been with him through a lot of different stages in life, but it requires follow through. And it's not automated drip marketing. It is stopping by with holiday gifts. It is emails. It is text messages that say, hey, just drove by your old house. You'd be so thrilled with how they've kept up the yard, or, and just things like that to show that you care, not just about the transaction, but you care about them. You care about how happy they are in their home. And you're still out here doing this in the trenches, working in this job that you love. And they trust you.
Yeah, I was with one of my favorite clients ever yesterday. And he's sold multiple businesses for him and companies. And he had come to us when normally you go to, like, a large commercial brokerage for the type of stuff they were looking to do, but they were scrappy. They built their company from nothing and they wanted to work with somebody local. And we earned their business and we kept up the relationship. And every time he was looking to do something, he'd call us, right? But sold his house, sold a couple buildings, helped with some acquisitions. And he since sold the company. But we had an hour conversation when I got there first about everything but real estate. Like, we talked about his new adventures in life, a new business venture he's getting into, and some connections I have that could actually help him. And talked about, like, how he found a really good group of people that helped him guide him to a higher level of business. So he encouraged me. He's like, get around other people that are doing the thing you want to do. He's like, I don't think I'd be where I was if it wasn't for this group. and like giving his hand down. But the relationship piece that you're mentioning makes me think of him immediately. Because I said to him, I'm like, it's never been transactional with me. It's always been, you're an inspiring guy to be around. And what I want to do is like, he thinks that we're a 5-star brokerage. I'm like, I feel like we're 3. I'm like, I want to get to like a 6-star level of service. And like those clients are the ones that will actually help you get there, because the trust factor is there, right? And you can really build something cool through those relationships. Being an agent, that, you know, the follow-up that you do sounds super dialed in. What is something that you're working on right now that you think you want to level up on in your business?
I think as we go through different stages in life, you're introduced to and connected with different groups of people. And I spent so much of my career, involved with my kids' activities, involved in school, at dance competitions and gymnastics meets and soccer games and PTA meetings and everything else that you're doing on the side, where you naturally connect with a lot of different people. I've got now 2 girls in college, and I'm just in a different stage in my life where I'm not meeting and interacting with as many new people as I was before. So I'm being very, very intentional about growing my personal sphere, not with the intention of shoving real estate down their throats, because that's not how I approach business. I want to be around and meet other people who are going to inspire me, who are going to be some really good connections for me. And I think that you have to treat every person that you interact with not necessarily as a potential client, which I think we hear a lot in conferences. Think of everybody you meet as potential. No, I want to think of everybody that I meet as a potential referral source. I might not be the right fit for everybody, but I think everybody knows somebody who would probably be a good fit with me as a real estate agent. So, going in and meeting new people, figuring out different groups to be a part of, different online and in-person, places to meet people. That's what I'm really focusing on. Because at this point, I feel like I've got the experience and the history to back up that I don't need to prove anything to anyone, which is a really, great feeling. But I would love to be in front of more people.
Yeah. And I think intentionality is a big thing, that if you can focus on something, that will expand naturally. Right. And I like what you mentioned, because I do think what I don't like about our industry is how hard it pushes for agents to monetize their database. I think of it quite differently. If I'm like, I can meet 10,000 people and figure out what they do and connect them with each other, with real estate as not like actively trying not to talk about real estate, eventually the work just kind of comes when it's needed or doesn't, right? Like, I think if you don't focus on it and you really do focus on giving people more than you're taking, the ecosystem takes care of itself. And I also think if you're focusing on things that you're passionate about, these natural synergies come, right? I got a call early this morning from a guy referred by another great past client of mine. Turns out he's really good friends, or did an event with Ramon Ray. Shout out Ramon. He's been on the podcast, who's one of the guys from the National Speakers Association. They're on the speaking circuit. I love thought leadership. I'm kind of in that space. And what's cool is I can help that guy with other speaking engagements. Sure, we can buy a property together and I can execute against what the referral came in at. But I bet you he and I will become more wealthy through the depth of our relationship than we will through the actual transaction, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And agreed.
I do like the intentionality piece. So tell me, what's your intentionality for the next 365 days? Is it more podcasts? How can we help you expand kind of your network database of people? Or is it like a local that you're targeting?
That's a really good question. I am definitely, going through the Serhant program, the shout it from the mountaintops. That's not the era in which I grew up. I grew up in a very conservative, faith-based family where a lot of my circle was within the church, and we couldn't talk about, I couldn't try to connect with people organically through a lot of these relationships that I had. I'm not used to, talking about my business and kind of promoting myself. And so being comfortable just talking about this in front of people, being comfortable doing social media, being comfortable, thinking about myself as my brand has been a complete 180 from how I did business. I mean, my whole business was built very, very organically from the ground up. When I was a young mom doing this part-time, and my mom was my partner for many, many years. We did this as a job together for a lot of time before she retired. And so, kind of thinking about doing this differently has really changed my approach to this point where I'm just super proud of what I do and how I serve and how I help people. And so, getting in front of more people, that, I think that's evident in the way that I'm doing social media and in just trying to connect and being more assertive about reaching out to other people, connections, colleagues, people that I know, and saying, hey, I think that I have something of value to add here, and being really proud and confident about that is kind of how I'm approaching it. I don't know that really answered your question, because it's not a step-by-step kind of
It does.
thing.
Well, like going back to the word brand, I actually hate the word brand because I think it's like full service realtor and a lot of other general words. But I understand what you're talking about when you say it is just letting the world know who Kristi Jenkins is.
Yeah.
For the things that you're passionate about and that way that you approach business. And we're all inherently different. And I think it's not promotional if you're just having conversations and talking about what's working, what's not working, what you've changed in your business. And it organically will bring in the right people and attract and repel the wrong people. Like
Yeah.
I talk about my faith all the time. I talk about the things that I'm passionate about, not passionate about. And sure, there's people that don't appreciate my energy and don't want to work with me. And the content actually helps me go through the process of eliminating them and attracting the people that have the same core values and principles and passions as me. Right.
Yeah.
I think the more you're intentional, thoughtful about how you do that. I'll give you one tip though.
Yeah.
It's not saying yes to everything, because I've done that before where I've done too much stuff and I'm like, wait, I got to roll this back a little bit and be selective about the ecosystems and the people that I choose to put myself around. And even the topics that I discuss. Right.
Yeah.
Because in this space, you see a lot of people doing podcasts and speaking about things that they may have an opinion on. But especially lately, I have found myself stepping back and trying to learn more than I speak, and then speak when I'm in a place of authority or a place where I can be candid about what part of my journey I'm on when it relates to that topic. Right.
Yep. No, that's a great tip. And I think too, one of the things that is kind of cultivating for 2024 is 2023. I think it's important to have a word that kind of drives you, something that kind of is inherently part of your core, but something that you really want to focus on. And for me, 2023, the word was trust. Mm-hmm. I wanted to only work with people who trusted me, and I wanted there to be that trust relationship. So I was very intentional. And I think, as I, kind of approach 2024 and thinking about the successes and failures of this last year, thinking about what that word will be for 2024 is kind of part of what, taking in everything that you've done over this past year and looking at what you want to accomplish the next year. That's kind of the next phase of how I'm structuring my business for next year. Because I think everything comes from who you are and your core identity. And as long as you can kind of figure out what that looks like, I think it's a little bit easier to determine the path of how you break everything down for the next year.
Yeah, I think it's super important, because in the things that you find success in, you probably want to do more of those. The things that you found failure in, you either want to delegate it or not do that again at all. Let's speak to one of each of those. Like, can you give me an example of a success and something you want to do more of next year from last year?
Events.
Okay.
I put on, I was committed to doing 12 events. I'm at 10 so far, and I've, still got a couple left to do for this year. I think events are hugely important because you can draw so much community support. You can give back in so many ways with events. And that was definitely something I'd never even thought about doing before. Mm-hmm. Working in the Serhant program, was how impactful that was to your community and how much people are drawn to you because they know what you care about. Mm-hmm. And so that was hugely important to me for this year. So I definitely want to continue to do more of that. I think I took on a couple of clients that I knew were going to be really, really tough and emotion suckers, because, you still, I think I have this innate, you just don't turn down business. You just, that's something that I have a really hard time turning down potential business, but it goes back to my word of trust. I only want to work with people that trust me. I don't want to be questioned every time I suggest, we doing something different or, pivoting or whatever. I want to work with people that I trust. And I got into 2 transactions I probably should have handed off to somebody else because they took more out of me than they should have. And it took away from everything else I had the opportunity to participate in.
It becomes a massive distraction, right? And I think simplifying and focusing on what you're good at, that tactic we like to use is print out an entire spreadsheet of every deal that you had last year and then rank them 1 out of 10, 7's not an option. And what you want to find are like the 5s and 6s that could potentially be 8 to 10s. But what you want to get rid of are the 1s and 2s and 3s that are always going to be 1s and 2s and 3s. And it's cool because once you find your niche, like there's a need for you. There's a need for the person that you serve out there. And that 1, 2, and 3 to somebody else is like an 8, 9, 10, right? But it's process of elimination in this business. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you turn, just kind of going on that a little bit, how do you turn something that may have been a 5, 6, 7 into an 8, 9, 10? How do you think about that?
4 questions. So we do an AAR, so an after action report. Typically after every one of my deals, I do it. And I look at like, what was the transaction? What type was it? Then I look at what did we do well? What can we improve? Or what did we do well? What can we improve on? And the last question is, how did I bring value to that client above anybody else they could have hired? And when I do those, it actually pumps it out onto a spreadsheet. And then I can click on the what could I improve on? Going through the what can I improve on list is usually where I'll find a 5 or a 6 and turn it into an 8 or a 10 because maybe I didn't set up the communication standards with them in the beginning and like just assume that they knew I was working really hard every single day. But if I don't tell them I'm working hard, they think I'm doing nothing and it creates a lack of trust, right? So sometimes, the relationship could potentially be here and it may just require something on your end in order to create that trust or create a better connection. Maybe it's a system or an SOP, right? What? My admin's going to touch them every single week and say, hey, Justin did all this week. This was the feedback. If you need a call, great. Like little things like that can easily turn a 5 or a 6 into an 8 to a 10. Because this, like once a client truly does trust you and feels that you have their best interest at hand, it's like your best friend where you can not talk to them for a year and then they come back and the relationship's the exact same. Where it really struggles and will turn to a 1 or a 2 is they're lying straight to your face, hiring another agent behind your back. And then all of a sudden they're not renewing the listing, telling you, oh no, I'm just gonna take it off the market. And it's relisted with somebody else 2 weeks later. And you're like, you're a 1, you're a 2. I don't ever want that to happen again. Right.
Yep. So it's more a self-evaluation, breaking down kind of what that process could have looked like differently, how you could have improved, and then taking that into the next transaction so that you're being a little bit more intentional about evaluating those relationships.
I think it has to be because, really, we like to blame other people, but sometimes taking ownership of what could I have done better is what helps you grow. The other thing is, I think if it's looking on the other side of things, it's recognizing a transaction type. So like you said, doing a transaction that sucks the energy out of you, maybe doing land development deals is something you really enjoyed last year. You just didn't deploy a lot of time against it. And if you did deploy more time against it, that could potentially turn a 5 or a 6 into an 8 because you're spending more time and doing the thing you love to do. Right. And I think that's the hardest thing in this business. Agents, I sell everything to everybody. Well, you sell nothing to nobody, right? Because if you don't know who you serve, I think you're going to always kind of struggle to please everybody.
Yep.
So advice for Kristi Jenkins 1.0. If you're here now, what are a couple key things that you would tell yourself if you were coming into the industry for the first time?
Team up with somebody, either a partnership or a group or a team, but do it with the focus of what can I bring? So you probably have some unique skills. This is something I didn't realize or didn't do. You think you need to learn everything and know everything about real estate and houses in your community. And no, you need to know you've got some unique skills and abilities that you've got either from a past work experience or just kind of how you were raised. Figure out how to utilize that and grow the team that way. And then their information, their knowledge will naturally be imparted onto you. And I think that's the way you build something, really sustainable. Eventually you can do things on your own. But I think finding a group, I I love the team that I'm in right now, my office, the collaboration. You don't have to do this by yourself. You do not have to do real estate as a one-man show, one-woman show. It is very easy to find a collaborative group of people that you can learn from, but you got to be willing to give something of yourself too.
Yeah, you got to show up. That's so key, right? Because if you're just showing up to take, it's like having a potluck and somebody's coming and taking all the lobster. Like, why don't you bring something to the table, right? It makes a big, big difference. Now, here's a question I've never asked a guest before. What's advice you would give your today self on what you need to do to keep succeeding?
Don't be afraid to invest in other people. Don't hold things so close. I think it's to be able to share a lot of what I've learned and the knowledge that I have, I think is really valuable, and without any expectation of anything in return. Be open, be honest, be a team player, be willing to invest in other people, and that will naturally come back to you in however it's supposed to.
Yeah, it truly does. And pay attention and listen. I think that's absolutely key.
Yeah.
And I got one more curious question before I get you out of here. So what is the version of Kristi Jenkins that you're working towards? Because it's clear you're a driver. You've probably evolved over years in your career. So what does that version of Kristi look like?
I think the version that that I see myself internally, but I don't know that I have quite figured out how to be that to everyone else, is someone who's more confident. I think speaking, when we're in this industry and we do what we do and we know what we know, you pay attention, you take everything in, but you've got to be able to speak about that to people in a way that they trust that you know what you're talking about. And I think too often I don't have the confidence behind what I'm saying, even though I am 100% confident in what I'm doing. I think the tools and the communication style that I have is naturally more of a back and forth communication. And I think there's a time and a place for that. I think that's the way that I've built a lot of the relationships that I have. But from a business standpoint, I think coming across as more confident in terms of how I know, how I do what I do, how I will take care of you from a real estate transaction standpoint. I think talking more confidently about that is something that I'm actively working on. And you got to role play that, which is also good for ChatGPT. You can role play in ChatGPT too, and kind of figure out how are you coming across as the person that you think you're coming across on, and coming across more confidently is certainly something that's forefront of my mind.
Well, I'll leave you with the number one way that you can do this today. Make today day one, not one day. It's stories on Instagram, and it's making a reminder on your phone for, I would say, once or twice a day. I would actually say 4 times a day, but start with twice a day, hopping on stories and then talking to the client at the other side of the phone and making a statement, not a conversation, but making a statement. The reason why I share that with you, Kristi, is that when I've done it over the years, it's the one thing I do consistently. I could go back and I could literally watch the evolution of my confidence on camera, or the ability to dictate what I'm actually thinking without worrying about how people think about me, what I look like, what I'm wearing, where I am. It is the one thing that will get you there if you do it consistently. And like, even if I go away on vacation for a month and come back, I notice a palpable difference in my tone and my delivery. It comes back really quick, like learning another language, but it's something that you have to practice. Yeah. You could do all podcasts in the world, everything else, but I promise you, I challenge you that I would start doing it on a regular basis, even Monday to Thursday, to give you the weekend off. And it will change everything for you, I bet.
I appreciate that. That's huge. And doing what made me confident, even getting on social media in the beginning, was doing Kat's 30-day of live Instagram challenge. So I definitely saw the fruits of that. And I believe 100%. And you just got to commit and do it. And that will come. So thank you.
Do it with the community. Shout out to Kat Torres. She's been on the Prime People podcast. I literally start Kristi's challenge, go into the Surrey group and then say, hey, everybody, let's do another challenge. Let's revive thing, and let's do it as a collective, right? Get around a community of people. If you've been enjoying the podcast, make sure to share it out with somebody you think could appreciate it, go follow Kristi on all the platforms. You can go over to her Instagram and DM her. One of my favorite things about this show is it gives you access to my community by proxy. Jump in the comments. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was. Kristi, thank you so much, and can't wait to collaborate with you more on the back end.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll see you on the next one.
Okay, bye-bye.